we're going to use AI today to collect the most searched questions on the internet associated with the royal family. When did the royal family lose power? We didn't really establish what type of power they had previously, but when did they lose whatever power they had?
In political terms, relatively recently.
Really?
George V, the king's great great grandfather. Did I get that right? No, sorry, great grandfather. Was in the 1920s. Well, from the very beginning of his reign, he was embroiled in politics because there was the passage of the Parliament Act of 1911. If that had not gone through, the then Liberal Prime Minister was going to ask the King to create, I think it was 300 and 450 Liberal peers in the House of Lords to override the Conservatives' in majority so that they could pass the legislation they wanted. So from the very off, and this was a problem that had simmered away in the last days of Edward VII, he was too ill to do anything about it. So from the very off, George V was embroiled in politics. And then throughout the 1920s, very much so, I think he was the last monarch directly to express a preference about who should be the next prime minister.
Ooh.
Which nowadays would be, of course, a great, well, not necessarily scandal, but certainly there would be strong opinions expressed. Then I think it wasn't particularly widely known that this had been the case, except, of course, that everybody in government knew about it. So it's pretty widely known. And Queen Victoria, throughout her reign, was not at all backwards in coming forward about expressing her views to her prime ministers. And it was well known, for instance, that she absolutely loathed Mr. Gladstone and adored Disraeli, not least because he gave her India. There's a famous cartoon of the 19th century of Disraeli presenting Queen Victoria with the diadem, the crown of the Raj, and she's a great beaming smile on her face. So yeah, relatively recently, let's say it was within the last 100 years. But I think Edward VIII was not around long enough. He certainly would have interfered in politics. Of that, I have no doubt whatsoever. King George VI was an entirely different sort of man, and just as much as he had his preferences, we know that he wasn't keen on Churchill to begin with, because Churchill had supported Edward VIII in the abdication crisis. We know that he later came to respect him greatly as a war leader, and then for the late Queen, there are all sorts of rumors and innuendos about which prime minister she preferred to others. She is said to have got on very well with Harold Wilson and with Alec Douglas Hume. Not very keen on Macmillan, perhaps. There are rumors about really disliking Margaret Thatcher, but then other people who were around at the time say that's absolute rubbish, and they got on very well. So, I mean, who is ever going to know the truth of the relationship between the sovereign and the prime minister? But in terms of actual exertion of power, there was the case in the 1970s of the Governor General of Australia recalling the prime minister, which was even then was considered a step too far, was considered to be something redolent of an earlier age. And I don't think that would occur now. But in practice, there are still great powers in the hands of the monarch. It's just that the king chooses, and the late queen chose not really to use them.
Oh, how exciting. That's a thrill to even contemplate.